Hello and a very warm welcome. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Now that the world's biggest shopping festival has come to a close, 11/11, Black Friday and Cyber Monday as well, now is a very good time for us to pause and look back and reflect on some of the highlights and the implications for retail right across the globe as we hit the next phase of the holiday season. My name's David Roth from WPP and I'm your co-host for this webinar, and I'm delighted that my other co-host is a retail expert extraordinaire, John Bird, Executive Director of VMLY&R, all the way from the sunshine in the approaching summer in Australia. John, a very, very warm welcome.
Thank you very much, David. Coming to you from Brisbane this time, the home of the 2032 Olympics. Thought I'd get that plug in, and also a very strong market for Black Friday as well.
Excellent. Well, I'm freezing here in London and you're in the sunshine. I'm not certain who got the better gig here. Well, John and I are going to be joined by, in different parts of this webinar, by a wealth of retail and commerce experience from a number of places right across the globe. Our expert guests will be Debbie Ellison, the Global Digital Chief Digital Officer of VMLY&R Commerce, Nick Walsh, the CEO of VMLY&R MENA, Nick Pan, the Chief Commerce and Strategy Officer of VMLY&R Asia, Hai Han Nai Jin, the CEO of VMLY&R Vietnam, Ali Tilling, Chief Strategy Officer of VMLY&R in AUNZ, and Daniela Stone, Senior Manager for Global Partnerships and Business Developments at Site. John, it's been, what, 16 years of 11/11. What's your take on this year's 11/11?
Well, as you know, David, Alibaba, who really invented the event in the first place, and JD.com, their strongest competitor in that market in terms of marketplaces, didn't release official figures this year. But from the unofficial analysis, it looks like they experienced about 2% growth. And look, I mean, Black Friday has become, I guess, if you look at it, arguably the planet's most widely observed retail event. But 11/11 is still the biggest. Singles Day is still the biggest. I mean, $156.4 billion US in sales.
I mean, it is quite extraordinary when it started, with 12, 13 vendors all those years ago.
Yeah, amazing. 1 billion shoppers. I mean, think about that. 1 billion shoppers tuning into this event. 639 million packages delivered on one day alone, on 11/11 alone. For all of that, they had to work pretty hard to get those results. I mean, there were 80 million products offered at the deepest discount of the year. And I know from all reports, Alibaba linked very heavily on merchants to deliver the best possible prices that they could to consumers on the day. But it panned out. It was very interesting. In this particular webinar, we'll take a little bit more of a focus on 11/11, as you know, and it'll be very interesting to talk to Nick Pan and Hai later on, as well as David yourself. I know that you had a webinar with Alibaba the other day, and there was some great takes coming out of that.
Great, yeah, and we're going to be showing a couple of clips from that during this webinar, and the entire webinar will be available to you to watch on demand after this. John, did you buy anything yourself?
Of course, and like everybody, electric toothbrushes, they were top of the agenda. But in terms of the top gifts purchased in the US, it was clothing and accessories, toys, gift cards, books, videos and games, and personal care or beauty. And I didn't go in for any of those. How about you?
Right. Well, I hear in the UK that the hottest ticket in town is the sort of electric fryers. So have you got one of those?
No, I don't.
Oh, well, there you are. Maybe Santa will bring that to you. Well, welcome to all of our clients and colleagues from across the world, those joining via the web or live on our live stream on Linkstream on the VMLY&R Commerce channel, or those watching on our very own BAV interactive experience apps, where this is being streamed directly into the live screening room. So wherever you're connected, a very, very warm welcome. Well, I think it's time for our first guest. So a big introduction from me and a big welcome to Ali Tilling, who is the Chief Strategy Officer of VMLY&R AUNZ. Lots of initials there, Ali. Very nice to see you. Thanks very much indeed for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Ali, you can help us set the scene of Black Friday in Australia and New Zealand. What's been different in 2023?
Yeah, sure. Well, look, Black Friday and Cyber Monday have been gathering steam here for a few years now. But what we're seeing is it now overtaking Boxing Day in terms of the kind of biggest sales event of the year, which is obviously kind of pretty big news. And I think there's probably two things this year that kind of stand out to me. One of them is a bit of a shift in some of the shopping behaviours that we're seeing. So I think we'll chat a little bit more about those in a minute. But I did also want to talk about the overall economic context. Right, we know that there's a COSI lives or cost of living crisis kind of in a few markets around the world. And certainly that is starting to bite in both Australia and New Zealand. What we've seen, predictions are that spend for Black Friday sales themselves is going to be up again this year. And perhaps not too strongly in real terms because of inflation, but certainly up. I think what a lot of predictions are saying, though, is because of that kind of cost of living crisis and that biting a little bit, we might see a less strong Christmas than we saw last year. So kind of a bit of economic context there.
Great. Well, that's always good to get that sort of context. Tell us a little bit more about, you hinted at it, at some shifts of behaviour and what effect that's having on brands.
Yeah, I think it's interesting actually. One of the shifts that we're seeing in comparison to Boxing Day sales, right, which always used to be in these markets the biggest event of the year. The thing about a Boxing Day sale is that you knew which day it was going to start on. Right, but for us, for people in markets that don't celebrate Thanksgiving, Black Friday often doesn't have that kind of anchor of which day it actually is. So what we saw, I analysed some search activity, and from July onwards, search for Black Friday was really ramping up, and Black Friday retail events was really ramping up in terms of what date it fell on, or what day of the year it fell on. So that's kind of a potential opportunity, I think, for retailers to look at in our markets and maybe make sure that's really kind of clear for shoppers up front. This year, though, we have seen the start of Black Friday pushing even earlier in the year than it has done previously. Volume of discount, depth of discount have both increased. And the data that I've seen from a couple of sources, including Adobe Analytics, shows that the discounts were particularly deep across electronics, clothing, and beauty. And I reckon, this is Ali theory, right? But I think that might be us seeing what we call the lipstick effect in action, which is where when we do have a cost of living crisis, when things like our mortgage payments are really kind of increasing, when those big payments are starting to bite, people want a respite from that. So we quite often see more purchasing of those kind of smaller items like lipsticks, like beauty items, like kind of clothing. So that's called the lipstick effect and might be part of the behaviour that we're seeing.
Well, your theories are pretty good, Ali, so I'll take it.
Thanks.
Now, Charles Dickens is very dear to our hearts over the Christmas periods, but
Yes.
He has obviously another book, A Tale of Two Cities, but you've got a tale of three brands to talk about using brand asset valuator BAV.
Yes, I did want to just have a chat about three. Now, I know this is probably very bad, but I'm afraid I tend to call brand asset valuator BAV. We tend to shorten everything in Australia and kind of familiarise it. So it's BAV to me because it's very dear to my heart. I won't go too deeply into the actual data points themselves, David, but I did have a bit of a look at some brands that do have different takes on Black Friday and different kind of approaches to sales and sales periods. And the three I'm going to talk about are Amazon, which obviously everyone knows, Adore Beauty, which is an Australian beauty brand, and Aldi. So I have to be very clear, Aldi, not Audi in this chat. I'm also going to talk a little bit about JB Hi-Fi, but it doesn't begin with an A, so it didn't fit nicely into my tale of three brands. So let's concentrate on the A brands first. I think what's interesting about Amazon is that actually until 2020, 2021, was not a leadership brand in Australia. So we've got to remember it's still relatively new to our market and growing in kind of traction, popularity, and indeed trust, which is really important. Amazon, in a really short amount of time, has primed Australian shoppers in very different ways to understand kind of sales events, online shopping, like particularly obviously through COVID, but in such a short space of time comparatively, has really led the way in changing our sales shopping behaviour and our trust of e-com. So I thought that was interesting, just looking at that shift from being kind of a lesser known brand just a couple of years ago to this leadership status. And that is a lot to do with Black Friday. Adore Beauty, I think, is interesting. It's using loyalty and content. They do a podcast, which is incredibly popular. And obviously sales like Black Friday to kind of recover from the post-COVID flattening of sales that a lot of kind of e-com only brands experienced. And it's really clever kind of how they've done this with a loyalty program and really rebuilt that kind of trust and excitement around their brand. The way that they've linked their podcast and podcast content to what is on sale on Black Friday is just like, it's such a kind of a simple thing in a way, but so strong the way that story is wrapped up and told. And finally, I'll just touch on Aldi. Aldi doesn't do sales per se, because obviously they always offer the lowest possible prices at the highest possible quality at the lowest possible price. But I think what they do that's what I've started to notice that's interesting, I think, is the way that they are scheduling special buys, the things in the center of the store that, you know, they're kind of where you get your chainsaw along with your milk, scheduling and choosing those special buys so that the same things that are on offer and mainly on sale during Black Friday are also there in the special buys aisle. So they're kind of competing from that point of view. And then, of course, once you're in there, you're seeing all the things like the kind of Christmas ranges, so on and so forth. I think that's another big effect Black Friday's had in our market here in Australia and New Zealand, is it has really forced brands to bring forward their Christmas advertising. Quite often previously, Christmas didn't really start until later November. Now it has to start earlier in order for a brand to go, here's my Christmas message, now here's my Black Friday messages, and making sure all that lines up.
Well, Ali, thank you very much. That was a great summary and a really good start to our web session today. Ali Tilling, the Chief Strategy Officer of VMLY&R Australia, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thanks. Thank you.
Now, you're watching the Holiday Wrap broadcast hosted by me, David Roth, from WPP in London, and John Bird, VMLY&R Commerce in Australia, and as we've heard, from Brisbane, the home of the 2032 Summer Olympics.
Now I'm really pleased to welcome Debbie Ellison. Debbie is the Global Chief Digital Officer of VMLY&R Commerce, based in London. And Debbie, it's pretty early where you are, isn't it? Thank you very much for getting up so early and talking to us.
No, not at all. Early and cold, but I'm warm in my cozy house, so all good. Lovely to see you, John.
Lovely to see you too. Deb, you're an expert in digital and social commerce. You also, one of your special subjects is also Gen Z, and all of those things have come into play really, really strongly in November in both 11/11 and in Black Friday to Cyber Monday as well. Digital sales across Cyber Week were up 6%. Black Friday online sales 8%. 11/11 really strong as well. But I think one of the really interesting stories was social commerce. It's been one of the big stories of both 11/11 and Black Friday to Cyber Monday. What are some of the highlights that you saw?
Well, of course, year on year for 11/11, online experiences have really ruled. I mean, China do, I guess, social commerce so well, and I just wish that kind of manifested in the rest of the world a bit more. This year is no different. To kick things off, AliExpress hosted a concert in Madrid with your favourite Spanish pop duo, John, I'm sure, Finzo and Baby Loud, and Dominican musician Henry Mendez, as well as other stars. So I think what's been different this year has been the increase in celebrity endorsements as part of the social commerce makeup, if you will. But it's now not just restricted to China. Amazon has further invested in their live streaming capabilities, thank goodness. And finally, with Amazon Live and Gwyneth Paltrow launching her full funnel activations for Goop, her own personal brand. And then we saw earlier this year that Amazon Inspire was launched, I think, in about May this year, which is a TikTok-like app. Bringing personalized shopping photos and videos to your feed. So that's all really interesting. We're starting to see some of that live streaming kind of permeate in other markets. And I'm really hoping that that's going to bring live streaming and social commerce to the rest of the world. Taoboy Live gained over 500,000 new internet celebrities. So we're seeing that thread of celebrity coming into social commerce. But actually what we're seeing off the back of 11/11 is actually the big celebrity influencers. Liu Yanggo, their streaming channel was one amongst several, earning nearly $40 million in just the first few hours of 11/11. But we also know Austin Lee Jackie, the lipstick king, he garnered almost the same GMV, but it was half of what he got last year. So the other trend that we're seeing in social commerce is kind of live streaming and internet celebrity kind of being a bit more decentralized, which is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, more micro influencers, is that what you're saying?
I wouldn't say they were micro, because in our world they're still macro, and the rest of the world they're still macro. Ali and David were just talking about, and you were talking about the size of 11/11. So there's still macro influencers for most of us, John.
Yeah, and that is interesting that we're starting to see those trends come to the West. I mean, you always say that the e-commerce sun rises in the East and sets in the West, and we can learn a lot from looking to China. Besides social commerce, one of your special subjects, as I talked about before, is Gen Z. You did a really major study on Gen Z last year. I'm sure you were tracking them through Black Friday to Cyber Monday in particular. What did you see in terms of their behaviour?
I think very similar to some of the themes already spoken about with David and Ali, in the fact that they were the ones looking to get the most deals. They've actually used this sales event to do their Christmas shopping early, probably because they have even less discretionary spend than other demographics. But funnily enough, even though they spent the most, they were the most cynical about the deals. So in response, we had Tmall promising to make this year the lowest price on the net. And TikTok actually were very intentional about subsidizing discounts for its sellers if they used newly launched TikTok Shop. So we're seeing the platforms and retailers respond almost in real time to that cynicism. But yet, if you look at the US, Target were boycotted continually on social platforms because people were just seeing that the prices that were being offered during the sales event weren't necessarily the lowest that they'd seen over the year. So I think that's really interesting. The other trends that we're seeing in Gen Z is that they are leading the footfall back into store again, something that I'm hugely excited about. So we're seeing this generation really be the ultimate hybrid shopper. And again, in response, one of the biggest Chinese shopping platforms, Meituan, has linked over 800,000 offline stores with their live streaming and social commerce to deliver within 30 minutes. So you're seeing, what I love is you're seeing these retailers and retailer platforms almost respond in real time.
Yeah, amazing. Just a little further on Gen Z, and one final question, because I'm really intrigued about your comments on this. The big retailers, the big platforms really talk a lot about sustainability in the environment in these kind of mass consumption events. is that something that's important to Gen Z during these events as well? I mean, are you seeing that translating through into behavior, like picking the right kind of delivery so that it's, less boxes coming to your home and all that sort of thing?
I'd love to say yes, John, and thank you for calling out the global research from last year. Everyone can have a look at it, genzparadox.com. During that research, we saw that there is still a values action gap. So there is a gap between how Gen Z want to buy and how they actually do buy, and that action is influenced by cost and convenience. And I don't really see that changing this year. However, what I do see is our brands and retailers really trying to help close that values action gap and really helping Gen Z try and behave a bit more intentionally and with purpose. So, for instance, this year, Amazon offered for the first time £4 on every order to collect versus to deliver. Do I think Gen Z chose that option because it's more sustainable? I'd love to say yes. Cynical Debbie says perhaps no, and they were in it for the cost savings. And if we look at the average shopper, they plan to send almost 15% of their purchases back in the fashion category. Gen Z still sit at 25%. So you can make up your own mind about how sustainable Gen Z are.
Debbie, thanks very much for your comments. And if anybody's interested in exploring the topics of social commerce, digital, or Gen Z, please get in contact with Deb, because she's about the best person in the world to talk to about those subjects. So thanks again for your time and for getting up early.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you.
Well, next up we have Daniela Stone, who is the Senior Manager of Global Partnerships and Business Development at Site. Daniela, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you for having me join you today.
Daniela, I'd very much like to start with what is AI visual search? Now, we've got through quite a few minutes and haven't mentioned AI, so of course it's time to do that.
Sure. So to start, Site is the leading visual AI platform for retail. We're working with top retailers. This is across fashion, jewelry, and home decor across the globe, helping them use visual AI to drive performance. But like you said, what does this actually mean? What is visual AI? So Site's patented visual AI technology, what we do is we automatically scan images, identify them, as well as all of the individual attributes within products, much like the human eye acts. So in combination with generative AI, retailers are using Site's technology to scan the product images, extract detailed tags. And overall, there's basically two main benefits. We would say one is on the consumer end. This is enabling a much more seamless, enjoyable user experience. And two, we would say for the retailers on the back end. This is basically allowing tech teams, for example, to streamline their merchandising process, creating a more robust, organized product tag database. So we're basically driving conversion and revenue, but also improving the operational efficiency in the back end.
Now, those two combinations, a benefit for the consumer and a benefit for the efficiency is a great combination. Now, Site has its technology deeply integrated into many retailers' e-commerce sites, so you have a unique perspective. What did you see in aggregation across them over the Black Friday period?
So to start, we looked at a data pool of 4.2 million transactions. This is from consumers who are using Site solutions. From this, we've been able to identify there's been a number of really interesting trends and takeaways. So if we break this down into the core verticals of fashion, jewelry, and home, to start, so with fashion, we saw that overall to Black Friday, Cyber Monday 2022, conversion and AOV remained pretty flat year on year. But what was by far the most interesting was what we saw was the changes in desktop and mobile shopping. So during Black Friday, Cyber Monday, 76% of fashion transactions took place on mobile devices. While 76 is an extremely high, significant number, it's actually lower than the 81% of fashion shoppers who use their mobile transactions for the rest of the year. What is this telling us? This indicates that for this Black Friday, consumers came very prepared. They likely sat down like to a dedicated shopping session on their desktop, as opposed just to impulse shopping absentmindedly on their mobiles. Because as we know, and as got mentioned before, like every dollar spent in the economy at the moment is very well thought out.
Yes, I think it does play to what we're seeing from other places at the moment, that actually consumers have been very considered about where they spend, what they spend it on, and doing an amazing amount of research prior.
Definitely. I mean, we're definitely noticing there's a far more practical, focused, and budget conscious shopper. Like, for example, in terms of our AI-powered product data that we saw, there was actually an overwhelming trend towards the purchase of basics. So, for example, we saw that it was long sleeve shirts, popular colors were black and white, cotton was by far the most popular fabric, and it was the casual stain styles which reigned overall.
What about jewellery?
So within jewelry, this was an interesting one. It was actually the only vertical where we saw an increase in AOV compared to last year. So on average, jewelry shoppers were spending, on average, it was about 8% more per order versus last year. This is likely related to the fact that many buyers are waiting for the big holiday season to purchase expensive gifts for their loved ones. And another
Well, maybe
interesting
there's
point,
going to be a great number of people getting engaged over the course of the next couple of weeks then.
can only hope. And what was also interesting is, again, talking about these shoppers who are, much more concentrated, far more dedicated, is that we saw that there was, on average, they were spending 40% more on desktop. So again, similar to fashion, we're seeing that it's this highly goal-orientated shopper, more likely to buy, more likely to spend more from desktop rather than mobile.
Now, as many people know who are watching, I'm an ex-retailer, specifically in the home improvement category, so I always take a very keen interest. What's going on in the home decor vertical then?
So for home decor this year, it was all about accessories. So average order value was actually down by 5%, but it was no surprise, again, similar to what we mentioned earlier, that our product tag data was showing us it was these smaller ticket items which were the top sellers. So for example, it was items like the throw pillows, beddings, mirrors, rugs, etc. And this indicates again that shoppers are waiting to purchase these larger furniture items and are instead, in the meantime, trying to beautify their rooms up.
So
and again,
finally, what do you think the implications are for the rest of the holiday period?
So I would say if we had to summarize, what we're seeing is this practical, pre-planned, budget-conscious shopper. So not only what we were seeing was that they're very, very conscious, but actually in the verticals that we mentioned, fashion, jewelry, and home, they seem quite disappointed overall by this sort of level of discounting. The 4 key takeaways then that we would say is 1, the budget angle in general. So retailers need to just make sure that they're continually following up with price drop notifications. Second of all is research and consideration. Again, we all know the importance of reviews and user-generated content. Playing up practicality, making things really as simple as possible. And I would say as a final point, in previous years, it's always been mobile, mobile, mobile. And I would say this year, we really need to remind ourselves to not forget about the desktop. Because with fewer transactions taking place on desktop across the board overall, what we're seeing is this higher value purchases are coming from a desktop.
Well, Daniela Stone, the Senior Manager for Global Partnerships and Business Development of Site. It's been a pleasure. Thanks very much indeed for your insights. And thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now we travel to Dubai, where we're joined by Nick Walsh, who's the Chief Executive Officer of VMLY&R Middle East and North Africa. Nick, welcome.
Hi, John. How you doing?
Good to see you, and equally sunny Dubai, I think.
It is. We're hitting 30 degrees in the morning, so it's fresh and things are cooling down for the end of the year. So it's a great time to be here.
Very good. Black Friday's become truly a global event. It's celebrated in 60% of the world's countries now, and in Dubai as well. But in Dubai, it comes in a different colour, doesn't it? Tell us a little bit about some of the differences from a colour point of view in the first instance about the event in Dubai.
It does indeed, John. We've had some good chats over this. I think it's been a pretty good revelation a cultural trend to everyone around the world. I mean, look, the region is big when it comes to shopping, and it's always been one which has been huge from a physical, experiential retail perspective. And I think you talked about the East and the West, and then the things starting from the East to go into the West, but the Middle East plays a really nice conduit role in innovation, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But I think as e-com has really exploded, one of the really interesting things, about 10 years ago, 2014, Souq.com, which is now Amazon, they coined the term White Friday. And really that being the Friday is the Muslim holy day, and the idea of using white, it kind of stands for peace and purity more. So it was reframed as White Friday around 10 years ago, and that's been a really interesting trend, and something which has stuck in the region really nicely.
Yeah, and you've also got Yellow Friday.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting thing. As it's evolved, we've seen lots of different options. So Yellow Friday, which is noon.com, which is the local kind of challenger brand to Amazon. But then on top of that, you've then seen brands as brands are trying to differentiate. So retailers are trying to differentiate rightly during this period when it's, there's lots of sales about. You've seen everything coming up: White Wednesdays, beauty Fridays, red Saturdays. I mean, it's an interesting move by retailers, because you understand the need to differentiate. It can't all be about price and discount, but at the same time, just lost you there, John. You're there still. Just the lights are off. There you go. The lights are back on. But at the same time, I think it is also providing a little bit of a challenge, because where Black or White Friday was very much an event in itself and a reason for people to go out and make that purchase, it kind of drove that immediacy, if you like, and the idea that deal was there. As brands, retailers have jumped on the idea of personalizing it for themselves, I think it also leaves a little bit of dilution maybe in what that message is. So what we're seeing is this idea of White Friday now extend. It kind of starts at the beginning of November. It runs right the way through almost to the, we have different festivals here like Diwali. It's a very multicultural place. When you throw in Cyber Week, when you add Singles Day, there's an awful lot going on. So in some ways, it's a great thing that brands and retailers are differentiating this way, but I think it is probably also putting out a little bit of consumer confusion over when is that time to really get the best deal.
Yeah, and if there's a lot going on in terms of events, there's also a lot going on in the malls, because one of the signature things with Dubai is the amazing mall experiences. What did you see through White Friday, Yellow Friday, Red Saturday, whatever, in terms of...
Yeah, indeed. And I think just to pull it back to and I'll call it BAV as well, as Ali mentioned, we do a lot of work with the malls here in this region. The malls are more than just a shopping centre. They are a destination. You've probably heard about the number of different experiences you can have. Ice skating rinks and ski slopes and fountains. There's an awful lot that goes on there, and they say they're more than just a shopping destination. When you look at BAV data on malls in itself, the kind of key strength comes from differentiation. So as you can imagine, at a period where there's sales, it's really even more important for those malls to differentiate themselves, not just through price and not just through offers. So yeah, we've seen all sorts of things. Really, a lot of stuff driven by purchase. So lots of big prizes and cars for purchase or repeat purchase. We've seen places like Dubai Mall offer Skywards Emirates miles, so travel miles to through their app. We've seen some of the other big malls like Mall of Emirates giving you cash back on spend, and even some interesting sustainability options. So when you reuse a bag, you get points for that against spend. So yeah, lots and lots happening. They're certainly busy places, but that differentiation, as I say, we've pulled from BAV, becomes critical, especially when the e-com sites are so active with pushing their offers.
Yeah, the final thing I wanted to talk about was just the ease of purchase in Dubai.
Yeah.
And some of the ways in which using technology, but also using people on the ground to make it easy to purchase during these big events.
Yeah, there's been massive investment in the kind of the ecosystem and the ease of getting things to people's door here. I think it's probably as fast as anywhere in the world in the way it's moving. So you're seeing you know, the likes of Bloomingdale's and NAS offer like 2-hour delivery on anything you get. And again, just trying to, I think, reach that, the immediacy and satisfaction you get from that physical retail purchase during sales. We've seen kind of hypermarkets, Carrefours of this world do 60-minute deliveries, and we're even seeing kind of the gourmet fashion brands even offering the opportunity to actually try before you buy, which is a really interesting opportunity to actually come and physically try clothes on before that. And one of the ones we discussed, John, which I think is a really interesting move, and again, I say it again, that idea of the immediacy of the sale and the satisfaction is actually moving from e-com to WhatsApp quite quickly, but actually talking to a human. So a lot of the stores and malls are kind of pushing back with, you know, you immediately talk to on WhatsApp to a person in the store. They can effectively do the running and the walking and the checking of prices and the getting the best price for you. The location of where we are in this region, we're seeing more and more people actually starting to shop globally. So it's not just from within the locality. So the likes of ASOS and Next and Shein, you know, they are widening it out, actually, the whole shopping experience to the whole world. And then you can get into the options of you know, different currencies and getting even better deals. So there's an awful lot happening in that space. It really is evolving.
Nick, thanks for your insights. A really different and fascinating market. Nick Walsh, Chief Executive Officer, VMLY&R, Middle East, North Africa, based in Dubai. Thanks very much for joining us.
Well, now I'm delighted to introduce Nick Pan, the Chief Commerce and Strategy Officer of VMLY&R in Asia, and Hai Han, who is the CEO of VMLY&R in Vietnam. Thank you both very much indeed for joining us. Perhaps you can sort of start by giving us a feel about 11/11. 11/11, lots of double-digit days have followed that. They're quite commonplace now. What's your feeling about whether the consumer's getting a little bit tired?
Hi, David. Nice to be here. I think like what Alison mentioned just now, you know, there are some markets that are very big on Black Friday because they have Thanksgiving. But yeah, I think in Southeast Asia, Thanksgiving is not really a big thing. Hence, that goes same for Black Friday or Cyber Monday. But what we are seeing is that retailers are still tapping into Black Friday for offline sales. But when it comes online on e-commerce, you know, it's still dominated by 11/11, your 12/12, 6/6, 9/9s, and the likes. And I think consumers are becoming a bit fatigued, you know, because it's coming around every single month, and they sort of are running out of things to buy.
Never run out of things to buy, surely.
Well, I didn't buy electric toaster as well.
Get an electric fryer, that's what you need. So talk a little bit about the whole sort of concept now of 11/11. You know, it started within the key marketplaces like Shopee and Lazada, but many have also been capitalising on those double-digit shopping festivals with their direct D2C. Perhaps both of you can give us a little bit of feeling about how that's working.
I think speaking of 11/11 now is not just about being part of the marketplace frenzy anymore. So these brands are taking the big sales straight to their D2C platforms, and they are not just offering deals, they're creating experiences, they engage directly with their audience and building brand loyalty. So one transaction at a time. So they are not just selling, they are learning and adapting, making each of the interactions more tailored and personal. So I think that compared to the insights, the limited insights from the marketplace transactions, going D2C give brands, you know, like treasure first-hand real-time data. So it's just like having a backstage pass to the consumer behavior, preferences, and buying habits. So it isn't just a trend, it's very much a strategic move that reshaping the way brands understand, connect, and sell to the consumers. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to add as well, I think many of our clients that we engage with who are very big on marketplaces as well, they do have a bit of a frustration because they don't feel that they have enough data from all the necessary transactions. And D2C, you know, they can really capture tons of first-party data and experiences.
And of course, that's become more and more important to be able to get first-party data, but I suppose be able to do your own analytics and have those analytics on your platform as opposed to somebody else's as well. Maybe talk a little bit about some of the flash selling trends in China. I know that there's been some extraordinary items in terms of the volume sold via flash selling.
I can talk about flash selling, but maybe Ha can talk a lot more about live commerce, which is really big in Vietnam as well. So I'm not sure if some of you have seen, but there's this Chinese social seller called Zheng Jiangxiang. She really went crazy and she managed to close about 14 million USD GMV across 7 days. And each of her items, she just gave 3 seconds and she, you know, no expression. She just give a quick description, price, and that's it. And I think many.
Let's just unpack that. 14 million in 7 days and 3 seconds per item. That's pretty impressive selling. She must be good.
She is good, and I think a lot of people are trying to replicate that as well.
Talk a little bit about the whole notion of, I suppose, social commerce turning into live commerce.
Yeah, I think if we talk about social commerce and live commerce, we have to talk about TikTok. You know, the TikTok shop has been a game changer, and it isn't just about shopping; it's a revolution of how we should view e-commerce. So TikTok now has positioned themselves as a shopping paradise. And according to one article that I read from Tech in Asia, they said that they're diving in with the ambitions of to seize over 13% of the e-commerce market share in Southeast Asia by 2023. And it is a very bold move. And they're really transforming the shopping experience. So they make sure that it's not about deals and discounts. They make sure that shopping is fun. And they are tapping into the creator economy. So turning everyday users into affiliate marketers is a very simple product tag. And, you know, you imagine that watching a video and see something like you can be able to buy straight from there, thanks to the tag of the creator. It's like when you are shopping from your favorite influencer closet in the real time. So live streaming is a very effective platform for them to do so. So they make it a very easy, and they're providing a lot of tools for the consumer to create the content by their own as well. So it's just very easy for any person. Every user can become a potential influencer. So they can create a fun content and social content with CapCut, with a lot of tools to edit content. So, you know, live streaming is really taking over also taking over TikTok and also taking over marketplace as well. It become really a very obvious trend that we notice in Southeast Asia and especially in Vietnam.
Well, I think we all need to take a very close look at what's going on in Asia, because what goes on in Asia comes to the rest of the world. Both of you, Nick Han, thank you very much indeed for joining us, and thanks very much for your insights. Now, as John said slightly earlier, we did a webinar specifically on Alibaba's 11.11, and that's going to be available for you afterwards to see all of it. But here, just a couple of clips from it, from both Alibaba and from retailer Holland and Barrett, who participated.
If we look at last year, so 2022, British firms alone sold £3.7 billion of products to China via Alibaba, which, you know, compared back to 2019 is a growth of 54%. And if you take it broader, which the study did, and look at all of the member countries of the EU, European exports to China via Alibaba last year hit a tremendous number of 32 billion euros. During the 11.11 period, Lazada saw the kind of excitement that we're used to seeing in China. So it's much more alive than 11.11 is in Europe. And I think even in the first hour, the opening hour versus a regular day was factor 63 in terms of uplift, I understand, from the team. So certainly it's a big phenomenon in Southeast Asia as well.
There is no perfect way to do 11/11. Every year there are new technologies, there are new innovations, there are new requirements and demands from the consumers. So done is better than perfect, I think, with 11/11.
Alibaba is one of the most important platform where you will start to build your brand home, demonstrate, who you are, showcase your brand, and tell the stories. And meanwhile, there will be other channels, there will be influencers that we work with to develop our ecosystem in China, where Alibaba, our Tmall flagship store, being the center of everything. And then we have, other channels built onto it, and that kind of build up a whole ecosystem in terms of our strategies on channel, on product, on who we work with, and on what our brand stands for. And on top of that, AI is not just about very functional, just what would you like to buy today? What is your problem? There's also the element of gamification in there. So during the past Double 11, our AI live stream host, once you enter, we call it the live stream room. You got games coming through, you got this elf, you got this animated, I can come into, because you can play with technology, there's no boundary, right? So that make it really more interesting and fun and engaging. And Alibaba, as a platform, is always very good at innovation and bring those gaming elements into this commercial element.
Well, John, I can't believe we're almost out of time. We've just got a couple of minutes left. Perhaps we could help everybody just sort of sum up a little bit what we've heard and I suppose our views and perspectives on what this means. Why don't you start?
Yeah, well, let's talk about the key takeaways, David. And we'll do this by the colours as well. But if you talk to the first one or the next one, black is definitely back. I mean, Black Friday was bigger than ever, particularly in the US. But at the same time, 11/11 was larger in GMV, but Black Friday was in more markets. But both events now are essential to the retail calendar globally. November is where it's at. So, our advice would be start planning for November 2024 now.
Absolutely, and that leads us on to the second, which is November is now sort of shades of grey. Black Friday and 11/11 are no longer sort of the primary one-day events. They all overlap. One long sale event. And brands and retailers do really need to think about those sort of tactics that they have to sustain that interest and maximise sales right across the promotional period. So it's getting tougher for retailers to enable them to do that, but the consumer is very, very keen and spots the deals and the bargains very quickly.
Talking about deals, moving to the third one, shoppers are definitely cherry picking value, and we saw that in a tougher economic climate. Discounts need to be authentic and they need to be substantial to attract shoppers who really understand what a real deal is all about. And we actually saw, we didn't talk a lot about it in this webinar, but buy now, pay later was also strong through Black Friday to Cyber Monday. The thing now is you can't fake a deal. Don't play if you can't engineer really outstanding buys.
Moving on to the fourth one, orange really is the new black. Orange is the colour of Alibaba, and China is still very much the market to look for innovation. We've heard a couple of times on this webinar of AI and the virtual influence and the shop attainment aspect, and that is something that Alibaba is very much championing. So it's important that brands experiment during the 11/11 period and then take those learnings and export them across to their markets right around the world. John?
Yeah, and number 5, and this really syncs with what you've just been talking about, David, but social scored gold during these events. Physical retail came back, and that was great to see. And e-com soared, but social led the way. And we heard that from Debbie, and we heard it from Nick and Hara as well, with that amazing flash selling. live streaming commerce, TikTok Shop, the launch of Amazon Inspire. Social commerce is really where it's going to be in 2024. So make social commerce a key part of your plans on holiday, but really right year round.
And finally, last but certainly no means least, green, is it becoming a focus? I think we've heard from a number of our experts today that the jury is out from the consumer perspective, but it's certainly not out from the manufacturer and the retailer perspective. A lot of focus going on in making the process, the supply chain process, the delivery process, the returns process, as green as is possible to try and reduce the impact over the environment. And we've seen a couple of moves by some of the big e-commerce players in order to encourage people to click and collect as opposed to have a one-shot delivery system to their home in the last mile. Well, a quick overview of what's been going on over the holiday period. There's still a lot to play for. A lot of focus from retailers around the world in learning what's happened over 11/11 and learning what's happened over Black Friday and being able to course correct their activity for the coming holiday period. We have pulled together a resource site for you. The details are on the screen at the moment. We will be updating it regularly as new information and new data, and I know a lot of the analytics and reports that VMLY&R Commerce are going to be created in the process of creating in order to really derive and help you with great insight. John, it's always been a pleasure and a privilege working with you, as it is over this. I'd like to thank all of our team, both at your end, at our end, and especially at VMLY&R Commerce. Thank you very much indeed.
David, can I put in one more thank you?
Yes, of course, John.
The last thank you is just to all the analysts behind the scenes, both out of the US, our marketing science team, and out of London, our commerce as a service team. That's really been the driving factor behind getting us all the information that we've needed today. So thanks for that.
A welcome, thanks. And finally, thank you all very much indeed for watching. It's a great privilege for us to be able to bring this to you. But from me in London and from John in Australia, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, and have a very good holiday period.
Thanks, David.